Hello, I'm Gary Rhodes from Brigham Young University Marriott School of Management. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Lecture Series. Hey, today we're pleased to welcome Carla Meine. After holding an executive position in several well-known companies, Carla saw an opportunity for innovation. And in 1994, she created Occurrence Teleservices, an inbound telemarketing company. In 2007, Occurrence employed more than 600 people, with the majority of the agents working from home offices. Carla and her company have been recognized for many prestigious awards. And after the sale of her company in 2007, Carla and three partners started a new company called Vast Equity. It's a growth equity fund which invests in businesses owned or operated by women. Carla and her husband, David, has 7 children, 7 grandchildren, and they reside in Linden, Utah. The Rollins Center of Entrepreneurship and Technology welcomes Carla Meine to the Entrepreneur Lecture Series.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just so pleased you could make it from Linden.
Yes,
Long
all
drive,
the way.
all
yes.
the way. We're really interested, and we're glad that you could take the time. We have a lot of women aspiring entrepreneurs, and I think they'd like to hear your story because it's one of real interest for our students. Could you take us back to the time you were working for a travel agency or something at one time?
Actually, Morris Airlines.
Morris Airlines.
Right.
And then before you were ever an entrepreneur, so you went out into corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
So take it from there.
Well, I always tell people that I was always an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Every company I worked for, I always tried to find ways to make things better, to improve performance and operations and make more money. And in 1993, I was working as the VP of Operations for Morris Airlines, and we had a huge problem.
Right.
We had half-hour holds. People were calling in for a $39 flight, and they were waiting a half hour before they got a reservation agent. Well, this was back in the day where we were spending 25 cents a minute for that person to stay on hold for the 800 line. Doesn't take long to figure out at $39 a flight, you're not making a lot of money if they sit on hold for 30 minutes. So I went to an AT&T conference in Florida, and there was a breakout session called Bringing the Work to the Worker. And I went to that session and I thought, that's the answer. I caught this vision of having agents all over the valley, working from home, taking inbound calls and selling segments of the airline. So I came back. My boss at the time was David Neeleman, and he was the president of Morris Air, and he said, there's no way we're going to have people working from home. We won't know what they're doing. And I said, I can tell you everything that they're doing. I said, I know how many segments they sell. I know how long they're on each call. I know how long their wrap-out time is. I know everything they do. I said, because I can manage that. And so I finally convinced him to do a test. We took 20 of our best agents who really wanted to work from home and said, okay, you help prove this out and you'll get to work from home. We took them home and their productivity went up 15%.
Went up?
Up.
Wow.
15% working from home. And these were our best agents. They were already outperforming everybody else. But they wanted to work from home so bad. And what they found is in a call center, if any of you have ever worked in a call center, very distracting. There's a lot going on, and you're in cubicles right next to each other. And they would say at home, I can shut the office door, and I'm by myself, I can concentrate, and I'm more productive. So we knew we had a hit. We started employing people from home, and the first thing that happened was we'd do these interviews, group interviews, and people walk in for the group interview, and we'd go, are you here for the reservation agent? And they'd say, yeah, and they'd be in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, or 60s. And all of a sudden, the average age went way up.
And talent, too?
Talent, life experience, and we just knew we had something. Well, 8 months later, we sold to Southwest Airlines, and they, I could have stayed with them, but I would have had to move to Dallas, and they were going to use the technology and then realized their union contracts wouldn't allow them to have people work from home or part-time, and most of these agents were part-time. So it just occurred to me that I could take that idea, go start my own company, and so that's how Occurrence was born.
So the idea came because you were working and you saw an opportunity, but you just went out and started a company with 800 agents? I mean, so there's got to be more.
We started with 10.
Okay.
Well, here's the funny thing, because you'll appreciate this, Gary. Southwest Airlines was going to sell me the equipment that we had used at Morris Air for about 10 cents on the dollar.
Okay.
So I went and got a bank loan. I got a signature loan and a loan on my house,
Right.
and I raised $150,000, and that was going to be enough to buy the equipment, get an office set up, and employ people for about a year, get me off the ground. Well, a week before Southwest was supposed to sell me the equipment, they changed their mind. They decided they were going to keep it just in case they ever did remote agents. Well, this technology was all brand new. There was no used technology on the market. So all of a sudden, I'm paying 35 grand for something I thought I was going to get for 3,500. And I had to have 2 of those. So all of a sudden, I needed more money. And my banker said, well, let me introduce you to Todd Stevens with Wasatch Venture Fund. They do venture investing. Well, I didn't even know what venture investing was, but they had money, and I needed money. So I figured, okay, great. I went in and met with Todd, showed him what I was going to do, and 30 days later, they had invested in me.
That soon?
Yes.
30 days?
I didn't even know that isn't how I do it. I would tell people, yeah, go to these venture guys. They've got lots of money, and they're like, you got to. That's 1% of 1/10% of people that ever get funding.
And 90 days.
Yeah.
And usually
yeah.
90 days.
90 is short.
Yeah.
So in 30 days, had the money, started the company, and the rest is history.
Well, let's go back. How was it even to go to a banker? I mean, you just walked in. I mean, to get the first, that's unusual too,
yes,
for a startup, right?
Right. Well, the thing is that I found out that I knew people that said, you know, here's somebody to go talk to. And the first banker, of course, turned me down. And I said, what about my business plan is not attractive to you? And they'd share with me what, and so I'd go change it. And then I went to the next banker. And then if they tell me no, I'd say, okay, what would make the difference on this? So after several meetings with bankers, Zions Bank was the one who finally said, you know what, we'll take a chance.
So there was no part of no that you understood.
Right, and I still don't. I'm not very good at that.
Yeah, that's a common characteristic.
It is. It has to be.
If they tell you no, what part of the no do
exactly.
I need to improve? Yeah.
Exactly.
So you started this with 8 people.
Right.
Who did you sell it to? Because who was your customer then?
Well, that's the other thing is there were a couple of people that said, you know, I know this company that needs some 800 services. So I just went around and talked to people who used 800 services and got some clients that did small. And it's really funny. Initially, we were going to have all of our agents work from home, and the technology, this was before the internet. I know that some of you can't imagine what that was like, but the technology we were developing, we would upload the scripts to the agent's home via BBS, and then they would download the orders to us. Well, that wasn't working initially. The phone switch wasn't up and running, so we had a conference table, and we had 6 phones and 6 computers, and we could only afford to have 1 employee on at the same time, you know, because we had to cover. Initially, it wasn't 24/7, but we had to go a lot of hours, and so this employee would wait for the phone to ring, and then they'd go to that phone and answer it for that client, and then they'd hang it up, and they'd wait a little while and run over to the other side and answer a phone, and if 2 rang at the time, then myself or my administrative person, Roger, would run in and answer the other line, and that's how we started. Yes.
Wow. So looking back on the early days and that, what are some of the things you learned? I mean, from those, what kind of lessons you could share with us today?
Well, the first is, I always tell people you have to have passion for what you do. And I know it sounds cliche, and you probably hear it from every entrepreneur, but you absolutely have to, because that's what's going to get you through the very difficult times. And people then ask me, okay, so you're passionate about telemarketing? Because that's basically what I did. I started a call center. And I know, you know, when I was a young girl, I didn't hope to someday grow up and own a telemarketing company. That wasn't one of the things I was excited about. But I had a passion about employing people from home. I just felt like there were so many people that could use this opportunity to be able to work from home.
And a lot of them were women?
Yes, probably 80% of my employees were women. And so that drove me. Every time I'd get a no, or, you know, a system would go down, or a problem would happen, and I'd have one of my employees come in and say, thank you for this opportunity. I've been, you know, you go, this is worth it. This is worth whatever I have to go through. So that's the one. The second one you mentioned earlier, I don't take no, can't be done, that won't work. I don't know. I've heard that hundreds of times. And you know what? We always found a way to make it work. So when someone tells you it can't be done or no, I just think it can't be done that way. but there's a way, and an entrepreneur has to figure that out. You can't accept that.
Yeah.
You have to be persistent.
One of the common things, we'll get a student in, and it's a major channel, and they'll walk in to us and say, well, they didn't like our idea. And I said, okay, what part of your idea didn't they like?
Right.
Well, I don't know. They just said no.
Right.
And that is really a difference in entrepreneurs, is that
Right.
sometimes when you can ask them, okay, so if I change this, are you more likely to do it? Then they've given you a commitment.
Right.
To move
exactly.
forward.
Exactly.
So what were some of the growing pains?
Oh, well, you will remember this, Gary, when we were all afraid of Y2K,
Yeah,
okay? And we, at the time, were still, transferring data, but it was time to go to the internet, so we had developed a brand new order-taking system that was going to work over the internet, and so our agents were actually going to be live on our database.
So you developed it or you bought it?
Well, we did both. We developed,
Okay.
we bought the server and everything, and then my internal IT group developed it.
Right.
And it was spurred because in 1999 there was this fear you're not going to be able to operate in 2000 on this system, which they were right. Our system wouldn't have operated in
Okay.
2000. So that was the catalyst that got us thinking. But so they developed this system, and then the T1 lines from AT&T didn't get delivered on time. Gee, that's a big surprise. Believe me, when you're in the phone business, you're going to find out lots of things that get promised you. And so they delivered the T1s December 15th so that we could test agents actually being remote on our system live. Well, so you go into the next week, it's Christmas, and so our IT guys are ready to test it. Well, in our business, Christmas week is the lowest week of the year. So our agents got on. We had about 20 agents at the time that got on all at the same time, and it worked, and everything was great, and we were all excited, and so life was good. We were under the wire,
Right.
By a week. And
Wow.
well, our busiest day comes just January 3rd, right after the first of the year, because we sell a lot of nutritional supplements, diet, exercise, all that kind of stuff. Whatever.
Good
So,
time to
yeah.
commit.
So January 3rd, the phones start ringing like crazy, and we put like 80 or 90 agents on the system, and it went to a complete halt. It was taking 10 minutes to save an order. And you've got somebody on the phone, and initially the agents were just like chit-chatting with the people. Yeah, my computer's running a little slow. How's the weather out there? Well, you can't afford to have people just sitting on the phones like this. And we were just, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So my IT guys are like, we need a bigger server. So we run out and buy a bigger server, and that wasn't it. And we're throwing money at it like crazy, and my clients are getting ticked because they're not getting their orders.
Yes.
We can't get them in the system. We're now paying, the agents are back to writing the orders on paper, faxing them into us. Then we have agents in the middle of the night. We've paid temporaries to enter them into the system. It was just a nightmare. And we tried everything, and one day, this is the other thing is I'm not an IT person. In fact, I have a love-hate relationship with technology. When it's working, I love it. But when it's not, I am ugly. And I was just beside myself, and my IT guys are, well, let's try this, let's try that. Finally, one day, I'm in the shower, and I think, I'm going back to my old system. I'm going back, because they'd say, it won't work. You can't go back to your old system. It doesn't, you're 2000, and I'd heard that so many times. Yeah, but it worked. I know it worked. So I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, what does it know it's 2000? If I tell it it's 1999,
Right.
what does it know? So I got in that morning and I said, we're going back to our old system. My IT guys go, there's no way. And I said, listen, we're putting 1999 in that date field. And it's January 13th, 1999. And what does it know? Okay, we'll take the orders, and at the end of the night, we'll change the date. Rather than pay people to put orders in. So he goes, that might work. So we went back to 1999.
Took a non-IT person to help the IT.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got to February 29th. There wasn't one in 1999. There was in 2000, so we had to create a day. It was a nightmare, but it worked. And we celebrated 2000 on November 16th. That's how long. We had to wipe that system out and completely start over. Yeah.
Wow. And this time you tested a little early.
Oh, yeah, we tested a lot before.
Well, and then you sold the company in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then you retired, right?
Oh, retired,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I did. So, yeah.
So what did you do?
Well, I did retire for a few months, and then
Okay.
I was approached by Greg Warnock, and
Okay,
he
I know
said,
Greg.
Carla, you should get in our industry, private equity and venture capital. And I go, I don't know anything about that industry. And he said, there is a huge need. He said, 25 to 30% of the businesses in Utah, and if you expand it out to the mountain area, are owned by women. But women only get access to 2%
That's right.
of the funding. And he said, there's this big gap. And he said, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but I'm the wrong gender to go after it. And he said, I know a couple women that I've just met that have amazing businesses, and I think if you guys all got together, you could do this. So he's the one that had the idea, and so I met with these other women, and we talked about it and looked at it.
Right.
And the reason it was exciting to me is one of the things I said when I sold my business is I had had such a great run and I had had such a success that I wanted to share what I had learned with other people, and especially women who really wanted to learn that. And so this was a way to do that. So we found out, what we found is that it wasn't just that it was a good old boy network, because it is. Most of the people at the table are men, but it was also that the women entrepreneurs weren't educated on private equity and venture capital. And they didn't understand
Like you.
it. Right.
Like you.
They didn't understand it, and they thought some guy was just going to come in and take over their business if they got venture capital. And when they learn now what it is you're looking for and why you would even do venture capital, I said, you know, I could have probably built my business to a $2, $3, $4 million business on my own, but I took on VC money. They got on my board. They helped connected me. They showed me ways of accomplishing things I hadn't thought of, and we grew it to 22 million. So I only owned 51% instead of 100% of a $3 million company. I owned 51% of a $22 million company. And when you explain that to women or men, but in my what we're focusing on is women, they get that. Entrepreneurs understand that, and so all of a sudden they're more interested. So it just wasn't that they weren't at the table. It's what they didn't really understand it. They needed to be educated.
So, you know, one thing that drives you as an entrepreneur is helping other women.
Yeah.
Because
it does.
we don't see as many women entrepreneurs. We see there's an increase in the United States, but still.
Right.
And even at the university, we have a number of women in the programs, but generally they don't start as many companies.
Right.
What advice would you give to aspiring women entrepreneurs? Because this is a national audience, and I think they'd like to know. You've kind of talked about the difficulties in that, but what advice would you give them for some of them out there thinking about starting a company? Because, you know, in most universities, some of the most creative and gifted students are the women students.
Right. I think that's the thing is take what you love to do, take what you are creative at, take what you enjoy doing, and think of ways that you may not even have to start a business. Maybe you just want to go into that business. I enjoyed the restaurant business, so I did that for years. I worked for Mrs. Fields Cookies and Godfather's Pizza and Sea Galley Restaurants, and I did that for years working for someone else. Gained the experience and also decided if it was something I liked to do. I actually thought if I started my own business, it would have been a restaurant. But
Well, what kind would you start?
I probably would have done a catering company because I had done this. See, when I worked for this little deli, you know, I wanted to increase their sales. Somebody come in and say, you know, would you cater a wedding for me? We'd never done that. Sure, I'll do that. And so I got my brother's van and I went and loaded it with stuff and went to this wedding and catered the whole thing, had a blast, and thought, oh yeah. So I probably would have done that had this opportunity with Morris Air showed up. So find out something you love to do, but you know, there's tons of opportunities for women, and I just don't think that most of the women look at that. They look at a field and just say, well, I'm just going to go into this field, but they don't look at, well, if this is something I enjoy doing, why couldn't I start my own business? What would stop me from starting my own business?
Right. But a lot of them don't look for opportunities.
Right.
I mean, your problem is you always see opportunities in anything you do.
Yeah.
Right?
I do. In fact, we were talking before, is that, you know, when I wanted to retire, it was just impossible. I was seeing an opportunity every week. I was like, oh, I could do that. So, yes, that's part of, my makeup.
Well, when you look back, I mean, it's been very fulfilling. And you have how many children?
7.
7 children, entrepreneur. Tell us about that, about family life and balance, because often when we talk to entrepreneurs, it's a benefit. Have any of your children rubbed off and become entrepreneurs? I mean, they have to see their mother very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things, it's a challenge when you have a family and you feel like it is a balancing act, but you feel like your family is really sacrificing and giving up a lot. And I remember when I won the Entrepreneur of the Year in 2003, and when I got up there to give my speech, I had said something about the sacrifices that my sons had made when, you know, in the early years. When we went 24/7, you know, in the middle of the night when stuff wasn't working, it was me. You know, I was down at the company trying to get it solved, and so there was a lot, what I remember, challenging times. And so I was talking about the sacrifices they'd made, and my boys were driving home from that event, talking to each other and saying, do you think that we sacrificed? No, I didn't see a sacrifice. I saw a lot of opportunities we got because of that. And so later they were sharing with me, they didn't see it as a sacrifice on their side. They saw it as that they were open to a lot of opportunities that they wouldn't have had access to. And so what I did was, when they had a science fair, I blocked it out. You know, as an entrepreneur, with the exception of emergencies and really critical client issues, or, you know, you fly off to somewhere, you can do that. So in the middle of the day, I left to go to the science fair. You know, I left to go to the dance recital. I left to do the things that were important. And so I was there for the tennis match or the, you know, soccer match and the really important things. And then I came back and sometimes worked late at night or, you know, early the next morning to make up for it. The work never goes away. So, you know, I did things, but my family doesn't feel like they sacrificed. And they're all very entrepreneurial. My son is an electrician and he's developing this scooter thing that you can do that helps the electrician work faster. And yeah, they're just, scoot around on the floor and can trim out a building in half the time, you know. So yeah, they're very entrepreneurial.
Yeah. What, as you look back, are there things you would have done different as an entrepreneur? I mean, are there things that that you would share that would have made it easier for you, or it's
would have made it easier. You know, I don't think there is an easier path.
That's right.
You know, I think, yes, you can learn things from people. And like, for example, I did my books for years. And my husband said, why are you doing the bookkeeping? And I'm like, because I don't trust anybody else, you know, with managing my money. And he goes, you know, you could pay somebody $10 an hour to do that. And you could go out and sell more, which is what you're really good at. And you could make 10 times that back. And he goes, and put in controls and, you know, manage it. And I'm like, okay. So I did. I hired somebody who, you know what, they were way better at it than I was. They were amazing at the accounting. And I was like, okay, why didn't I do that sooner? So sometimes we do take on, as an entrepreneur, we take on too many things. And there are other people that can do it much better than we can. And we need to bring them on sooner and do what we do best, because you'll make much more money doing what you do best than in the tedious tasks of the job.
Yeah, that is a great lesson. It's almost like sometimes we have to give up control to gain more control.
Exactly.
And that second point, I agree. It's all about leveraging your strengths. You know, play to your strengths.
Exactly.
But as an entrepreneur, we generally like to control the things.
Have it all.
Have it all.
Well, especially when it comes to the money. Because I had heard all the horror stories of embezzlement and partners that took off with the money. And
it does happen.
It happens. So, but you put in the controls and you watch it and you know your numbers, so you know if anything goes out of whack, you're on it right away.
Yeah, that's a good point. Other things that you would like to tell other women entrepreneurs?
Well, it's not just women. I think that, you know, I wasn't great at marketing my company. And so I finally brought on teams of people that were great at marketing and at this. I'm really good at sales.
Personal one-on-one
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah,
but the marketing, you know, I always use this example. I convinced my husband to come to work with me. That was really hard to do.
I was going to say, you're very persuasive.
That's right, I'm a good salesperson. But that was really hard for me to him to say, yeah, I want to go to. I report to her at home and at work. I don't think so, you know. But he had really great technology and marketing background.
Yes.
And so he came on, and the first thing he did is he did this whole baseball theme, and he had us on baseball cards. And I thought, what a dorky idea. I can't even believe we're doing this.
But you didn't tell him?
No.
No, okay.
Well, no. At first I said, you're going to put me in a baseball uniform. We're going to go out to the Buzz Field, and we're going to, and we're going to this trade show, and it's, you make the pitch, our clients are pitching, and we'll complete the play, you know? And I just thought that was the dumbest thing. And we get to the trade show, and we were the hit of the trade show. Everybody was coming up, will you sign your baseball card, you know?
Yeah.
I'm giving them to my kid. They won't know the difference, you know, because they looked like real baseball cards. So what it taught me is I wasn't great at marketing, but I needed to find somebody who was.
Yeah.
Because then my company just took off when we really marketed it. So you need to have that, whether it's you or someone else. You need to be good at marketing.
Play to your strengths and know where your weaknesses are.
Exactly.
Yeah, great, great. Well, let's take some time and turn it over for questions. So if you have questions, Carla's mainly willing to entertain them. Go ahead. You pick.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you talked about how your kids felt, or you felt that they had certain opportunities because you were an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Like, what are some of those opportunities that you felt that they had because of your work life and success?
Well, first of all, they always had a job if they wanted one. The funny thing is, none of my kids went into the business. They didn't want to, but they all worked there.
Yeah.
Over the years, they all worked there, but none of them chose to go into it. They all did different areas of sales. I had one kid that just wanted to be a janitor, needed some extra money, and so he did the janitor thing. But most of them got on the phones and actually took calls. Some of them were fairly good at sales. So your kids always, I mean, can have a job.
Yeah.
You can find a way to employ them in your company. So that's the first thing. The second thing was that they would see, like, there was a good example. One of the clients that we took calls for was called Dolph DeRouche, and he did a real estate program. And my son went through that whole real estate program, and he said, Mom, I want to do this. I want to flip homes. And so I said, okay. So he talked me into investing in it. So I bought the houses, then he would put all the energy. I would buy the materials that we'd agreed that he was going to do. He put all the labor in. I got paid first, so the house sells. I get my original investment and my money. Then he gets paid for his time, and then whatever's left, we split 50-50, and then he can take it to invest in the next house or not. It's up to him. So they had, it wasn't just within my job, within my company they had jobs, but they actually had jobs outside of the company as they would see opportunities. One of our daughters, she would come in and optimize the computers. So she would clean. We had 400 computers.
Right.
Kept her busy full, you know, part-time after school, just cleaning computers, optimizing them, reformatting them, and all the things that had to be done just to keep those going. And, you know, my IT guys didn't want to do that job. You know, that was like the last on their list. And so when we said, our daughter's going to come do this for you, yay, that's awesome. So
work ethic kind
Yeah.
of thing. Okay, good question.
Yes.
So you're involved in venture capitalist activities. Would you consider yourself, one, more of an angel investor, more of a VC? And then second, how do you consider the opportunities you go after would be different than opportunities like Greg Warnick would go after?
Okay, so we're in the growth equity, so it's kind of in between VC and private equity. We're looking for businesses that have been in business 3 to 5 years, probably $2 to $3 million in revenue or more, and they're ready to go to the next stage. Most entrepreneurs we found can take themselves to $2 to $5 million. And
true.
really, it's above that they start struggling with. They can't see the forest through the trees kind of thing, and they need some outside people on their board. So what we do is we bring capital, first of all, but second of all, we bring expertise. We come on your board, and then we'll say to you, you know, you need a CFO, like someone said to me, and I said, I can't afford a CFO, and you said, They said, you can't afford not to have a
Why.
CFO. They should pay for themselves if you find the right person.
Yeah.
So that's what the board brings to you. The difference with what the Access will have deals to, I'll give you an example of some of the ones we've seen. There's a woman that owns a low-level waste, nuclear waste container company. And she is
Wow.
not interested in venture capital, private equity, but a woman, my partner, knows her. And so we were talking about it, and she said, oh yeah, I would never be interested. And she said, you should talk to us. So we sat down with her, and the new stimulus package has a ton of money in it for this division. Her business is going to explode. And she says, well, you know, the challenge is I've got to buy all these new containers, and this is how much they are, and I can get a bank loan for that. And we said, we don't want to be the bank loan. You go ahead and go get the bank loan. What we want to be is that money that you don't have to help grow to the next level and take advantage of this stimulus package. And so we're in that discussion. Greg Warnock would never see that deal. Angel investors, VC guys, private equity would never see that deal. And that's what we're saying is there's a niche of deals out there that we'll give our investors access to that they will, in their portfolio, they would never have access to. So when somebody's trying to diversify their portfolio and say, well, I'm already in mid cap and I'm in, you know, small cap and I'm in large cap and I'm, you know, well, are you in women owned? Well, no. Okay, if you carve out a small piece for women owned, we're going to have you in deals you're not seeing. Plus, there's not going to be an auction. There's nobody else at the table. There's not going to be 6 different companies giving term sheets and trying to figure out who's going to win out. That's just not going to happen. So that's why we think we're different. Did you have a question?
Yes. In regards to the people working from home, probably because they're working from home, you had them on like piecework or whatever, and getting paid in accordance with what they were accomplishing, or how did that work?
Well, we actually paid them as employees. So they made like $10 an hour just to be on the phone available. And then they were commissioned salespeople. So the more they sold, the more they made. The higher their percentages, the more they made. They were selling products $350 to $400, $500 sometimes. So they could make some pretty good commission. I had some agents working part-time making $60,000, $70,000 a year working part-time from home. So we actually employed them. Some companies pay a contract labor, like you only get paid per minute that you're on the phones or whatever and you're actually talking. We never went that route because we wanted to schedule the agents when we needed them, not when they wanted to work. And so you have to be really careful if you're going to do piecemeal or contract work, because they can choose not to show up and you could end up abandoning a lot of phone calls, and that's your revenue. Those abandoned phone calls make you no money and they're very costly. So we would schedule them when we thought the media was going to come in, and sometimes we were wrong because the client says, well, this is when it is, and they just sat there and we just paid them. Other times, you know, it was way more than we had, so we had a great system for paging out to people. You know, online now we had the ability to send messages and say, hey, if you're not doing anything, jump on, we could use you. We had people make a lot of money just jumping on when they weren't even scheduled, and they'd get paid. So yeah, we figured out.
And that was very creative back then, to have that kind of flexibility. You know, and it really goes, you have to believe in people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a lot of philosophies have the, you know, the big stick or have the carrot, and you put out the carrot and said, we want you there, and if you sell, you make more money, and you can do it at home.
Right. Well, we had agents working 2 hours in the middle of the night. Years ago, all we were doing was infomercials, you know, 14 years ago. That's basically what we were doing. Yeah. And all those infomercials were running in the middle of the night. Well, we'd go from needing 5 people on to 70 people for 1/2 hour. And then an hour later, another half hour, another hour. So I'd have agents that would come on, they'd work for a half hour, go to bed for a couple hours, we'd get back on for a half hour, and in the middle of the night, they'd work 2 hours and make as much as they could in an 8-hour shift. Wow. And then they're still with their family, they're still doing all of their other commitments, so they were loving it. Yeah. You know, it was a win-win because I didn't want to pay them for the other 6 hours to just sit there.
Right.
So.
Good point.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes,
over here.
back there.
What role did your husband play? I mean, for a while he worked with you on your company. What other, you know, ventures has he done? Is he an entrepreneur like you, or what's his?
Yes, he's more of an entrepreneur than I am. He's what I'd call that serial entrepreneur. I think he started 18 different
More entrepreneur than you?
Yes. I don't know. Well, I think because I got into something and stuck with it for 13 years, and that same time he would have, you know, done 3 or 4 or 5
that's true.
ventures.
Knowing David, that's right.
Yeah. So he's an entrepreneur too. Yes, I will make that point. It is important that you have a spouse that will support you in that, because it's a crazy life. Being an entrepreneur, it has all these advantages, but it is a crazy life. And some people that like real stability, and they're like,
no ambiguity.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't do well with an entrepreneur. So you do have to make sure that that person can support you through all.
David's a quality guy.
Yeah,
we know him. He's wonderful.
Yes. Go ahead. You.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I looked at your website. Can you disclose like what type of deals you currently have done, or have you closed on any yet?
We haven't. We are still in the fundraising stage, so we're raising money right now. And people laugh at me and say, "Why would you even try to raise money in this economy?" And I thought, what a better time to raise money and deploy capital, because you think about the funds that raised their money 4 or 5 years ago and deployed it over the last few years, and now they're in these companies here, and all these companies are down here, and they've got to wait for those companies to come back, or they're selling them off at losses. And so if you think about it, the best time to get into venture capital, private equity, is at the low. And we know we're somewhere at the low. So we're looking at people and saying, you know what a better time. And since you're not having access to these deals anyway, what a better time to invest. So we haven't deployed any of our capital yet. We have some. We have a commitment from Zions Bank. They're our first institutional investor that has given us money. We have some of our own personal money we've put in, and we're in the stage of just talking to a lot of different people. But we're still looking at deals, because we could deploy some of that capital and keep our fund open and continue to raise money on those deals. So we may look at that. We may deploy capital before. We probably see, between my partner and I, 20, 30 deals a month that we're looking at. Oh, yeah. Wow. And we could look at more. We just have a cutoff. A lot of people are startup, and so we're not doing seed capital. So we'll send them to Utah Angels or somebody, and we'll help them network. But we're not doing seed capital. We're not going to be in the early stage.
How do you screen good ideas from bad ideas? I mean, what is
That's a challenge. You fall in love with all of them.
Yeah.
It is really hard. It is really hard. I'd say for us, what's come across is, number one, the entrepreneur themselves.
Okay.
You're investing in them.
Right.
So there has to be a connection that you say, you know what, I believe in this person. I see their idea and I believe in them. So that's the first thing. One of the things we typically do when mentoring these entrepreneurs is help them put together a presentation, because they come in and you go, no, this is not going to make it. You're not going to raise any money with this presentation. So we spend a lot of time with them on their presentation and getting really clear about. The next thing I look at is, what is the idea? What is the idea? And then what is the market research? How big is that market? What are you going to do with the funds if you get into this market, and how are you going to use those funds to create more revenue? Then you look at the team they have surrounding themselves, and the model of how they're going to take it to market. A lot of people have a lot of great ideas. So we help the early stage entrepreneur, because we want to keep in contact with those women, because in a few years we may be very interested in them. So yes, there's plenty of deals out there to look at. That's not a problem at all. We have plenty.
I have a lot of women family members that have kids, and they love raising their kids, and they're having a great life being a mom and everything. But a lot of them kind of have an outlet, they sell Amway or do this kind of job or something or other. So kind of to a really small degree, they're kind of like entrepreneurs.
Right.
But I feel like they put a lot of effort into these things, and it doesn't ever really yield a long time fruition.
Right.
If you had just a group of those women in front of you, I mean, what could you maybe say to them to give them maybe a light to a new path that's a little bit better than the common, hey, let's sell this juice or let's sell this, and you know what I mean?
Yes. It's actually not a bad place to start, because it's low risk. A lot of it is, not a lot of money takes to get into some of these, and they don't have that. So it's not a bad idea to get some experience, but I agree with you. The reality is it's not going to typically make a lot of money. Right. So what I suggest to women is, I just made the suggestion to a woman yesterday, is she has really great sales ability. And her husband is in the coaching training industry.
Yep, right.
And they said, you know, if he would go out and get some more contracts, then he would be busier. And I said to her, why don't you do that? Why don't you go out and sell these trainings to these companies, so that, because he's really good at fulfilling them and
Right.
she's really good at selling.
Selling them.
And she sat there and thought, no one's ever suggested it. I've never thought of that. I could do that easy. And I go, so it's like we talked about, there are opportunities all around you. Be open to it. That's the first thing, because a lot of times there's an opportunity and you just haven't seen it. So sometimes it takes someone maybe from the outside to say, have you ever thought of this? Have you ever thought of that? What would you really like to do? And open yourself up to ideas.
Okay. One more question.
What role did your education play? You know, you kind of started with your story with Morris Travel, but
Right.
Beforehand, what would you tell the students here in our roles right now?
I went to BYU of Idaho back when it was Rick's and got a business degree. And the reason I love the business degree, it was not just because I went into business, but it's a great opportunity to get in a field with lots of different things. I remember thinking when I was taking statistics, why am I taking this class? This is the stupidest class. I'm never going to use this. And yet, when I got into business, I'm like, I use statistics all the time. Draw conclusions from statistical data all the time. My personnel management class, I recognized right away how important that was going to be. There are a lot of classes, so I would get an education in a lot of different areas, because you may think, I'm not going to use this, but you're going to find out a bulk of it you do use.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
today. I
I
really
enjoyed
appreciate
it.
it. Well, it's great advice and insights. I think there's a number of things that we can take away from this. One is, like all entrepreneurs, you're right, passion is important. Find something you like.
Right.
And experience helps too, because like many entrepreneurs, you saw opportunities through your experience. When
Right.
people didn't want to deliver a service, you saw value. You said, well, I'll take it out on my own.
Right.
But I thought it's also quite insightful that you said, play to your strengths. I mean, you could have moved faster in situations if you would given up a little. You know, if sales in your area, which it is in your area,
Right.
then find someone that can do it. If finance is not one of your strengths, but you enjoy it, still there are people that can do it better and faster. And I think we can learn a lot through those kinds of issues. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of hard work.
Right. It is.
It's a lot of hard work, and there's no silver bullet there.
No.
Well,
No.
thank you again for coming on
Thank
here
you.
today, and we hope to see you back sometime.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.